Hey guys, it's Brett. Thanks for dropping by my channel. So, April wrap up. I read 10 books this month, which was a pretty good month for me. Actually, it was a very good month. Who's kidding who? That's a good month, 10 books. I'm happy about that. Can't complain about that at all. It was a weird month though, because when I got into it, there were certain things that I read that I was like, wow, liked it, but didn't love it and expected to love it. And then it turned out some things at the end that I thought, oh, well, I probably like this okay. I ended up really loving. So all of that's kind of weird, but yeah, let's talk about it. All right, so again, before I start, let's just say it's May 1st here, launching into a new month. Two things that I've just started to read. The first is Gina Chung's Sea Change, which I'm excited about this, but the fact that it revolves around a woman who works in this time it's I think it's a mall, she works at a mall aquarium, and somehow becomes friends with an octopus. It's not lost on me that this starts to sound very much like Remarkably Bright Creatures, but we'll see. I'm still interested in it. I love this cover. You know I love my octopus. So I'll let you know. The other thing that I'm just starting, which comes out tomorrow, is Chain Gang All-Stars. Really excited about this one. It is just the first of many of the May bounty, which I'm going to do another video talking about all of the books coming out in May. Hope to have that in the next few days. Cool? All right, so launching in. The first book I want to talk about that I read, not the first I read, but the first I'm going to talk about, is Girl One by Sara Flannery Murphy. This was not on my radar at all, but my friend Matt over on Instagram recommended this to me as part of 12 books recommended by 12 friends. So this was one of those. And I gotta be honest, I loved this. Do you remember that TV show Orphan Black? If any of you remember that, about a girl who gets cloned, and she finds out she's been cloned as part of a science experiment, and she suddenly begins to team up with all the clones because there's a nefarious organization trying to wipe them all out. This will totally give you those vibes. This is about a woman who is Girl One. She was the first of a group of girls that were born to women who lived in a homestead, a commune, overseen by a doctor. All of these girls were born without having male DNA contributed to their conception. So this girl, suddenly her mother goes missing. I say girl, she's a woman.
She's grown. She's a grown-ass woman.
Her mother goes missing and she goes to investigate, and it starts to uncover all of these secrets about her past, about her mother's past, about the other girls, they were girls then, which is why I keep saying girls. And it's called Girl One, but she's actually Woman One now. Anyway, it's a great kind of techno sci-fi thriller, but doesn't lean so far. If you can go with the science a little bit and let it go, you're in for a great ride. This would be a great movie. Probably a great summer book. Sara Flannery Murphy has another book coming out this summer, which I have the NetGalley of, and I'm excited about reading it. But anyway, this totally scored for me in the most unexpected way. Would highly recommend that one for the fun. All right, The Only Mother by Rachel Harper. This was another one of the books that were recommended to me, and this was a really mixed bag. I loved the idea of this one about a young man who goes to seek out information about his father after his father passes away, who he believes was effectively involved with his mother and then died, which is what he's been told. Well, he goes to see his father's father, effectively his grandfather, who he's never met, to say, I'm your grandson, can you tell me about my father? To which the grandfather responds, your father, you should be asking about your other mother. It was my daughter who basically raised you and was involved with your mother. So it sets off this obvious series of questions, kind of blows this kid's life up. And then the book kind of goes back and forth in time among all these other players, the other mother, his grandfather, to kind of uncover what the truth was and what really happened. So loved this concept and liked it. My problem with it was it became very kind of, for lack of a better word, soapy, and it felt kind of melodramatic. And a lot of that was just based on some of the dialogue between the characters. I was really having a hard time tapping in, and it started to feel just a little bit, well, I said it, melodramatic to me, and not necessarily real, and that kind of bummed me out. So this was probably the one book this month that I was just kind of like very iffy on. I liked it, didn't love it. Okay. Also had an interesting reaction to this. On the Savage Side by Tiffany McDaniel. I started to talk to you on another video about this one. Tiffany McDaniel, I did not read her book, Betty. I had said before, I plan to read it. And here's what I'll say. She's a great, great writer, beautiful writer. This was tough. It was tough because of the subject matter. It's based on the real life Chillicothe six girls who were murdered in Ohio. They never caught the killer. And so Tiffany McDaniel, who's from Ohio, wrote this book as a tribute to these women so their memories and their lives wouldn't be forgotten. All of that I appreciate. Some of the brutality in this it just was a lot for me. And I feel like if I read this at a different time, maybe I would have had a different reaction to it. But I just started to personally, it just weighed on me so heavily that unfortunately that influenced some of my experience reading the book. And all that's happened, and it's valid, and it's real, and we all have those things. I know a lot of people love this book. Similarly, I could say, like, when I read A Little Life, and I know many people have, that again has such brutality in it, but for whatever reason, that I got through and worked, and I think it's one of my favorite books, despite the fact that it's horrific at times. This, I struggled with. So it has nothing to do with her writing. I think she's an exceptional writer, and like I said, I plan to read Betty this year. It was just the subject matter really, 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 really brought me down. So there you go. And consider that a spoiler or a warning, as it were, if you're sensitive to violence and those kind of things. And I'm happy to answer any questions you want. Please message me, and I'm happy to talk about it. But again, very well written. Another book that I had a very interesting relationship with, Thomas Mallon's Up with the Sun. First of all, I have to tell you that, like, I was enjoying this so much that I actually went out and found on eBay a lot of 4 other Thomas Mallon books, which I got. He kind of specializes, and his thing is focusing on historical figures many times, or, people from history that he then kind of creates a fictional story around real life events. He has a series of presidential ones, one on Nixon, I believe, one on Bush Jr., and then one on Reagan. This book, I'm going to get his name right, is about Dick Cowman. Dick Cowman was an actor in the 40s and 50s who was a Broadway guy, and then very briefly had a television career during the era of post, kind of at the end of I Love Lucy, because he gets involved in Lucille Ball and her kind of company and world. He was extremely ambitious, very unlikable, and then ended up getting brutally murdered. He and his lover were shot and killed in what looked like a robbery gone bad at his apartment. So he kind of reconstructs his story back from the beginning, goes back and forth into the present day. Well, what was the present day? And his kind of rise to pseudo fame. Here's what I loved about it. It's very much for people who like Sunset Boulevard, All About Eve, all those kind of Hollywood Babylon-esque kind of stories about ambitious people. It's very funny. and I liked it. I didn't love it, and I don't know what I was expecting, but I would recommend this book, and I did like it enough. It wasn't boring to me or anything like that. And I love this whole kind of old Hollywood, Broadway kind of world. There's a lot of real life players who come into it. And if any of those things appeal to you, this might be something that you really like. This is one of the books I also did on audio, and it was very well done on audio. So while I can't say you must run out and get this, if you're a person who any of the things I just described appeal to you, it could be your cup of tea. All right, I just finished this last night. Actually, I finished 2 books yesterday for the end of the month. This is one of them, Brother and Sister Enter the Forest by Richard Mirabella. What an interesting book. This is a debut novel. Again, not a light read, and by that it goes in between past and present. It's a brother and sister. The brother is gay, and a lot of it's kind of his coming of age in the past. He gets involved with an older, and when I say older man, they're both students. This kid is, the older guy is like 3 years older, and this kid is like 17, so he's like 20 years old. But the kid is very sensitive, and kind of a horrific act of violence he's partial to, which has rippling effects years later, when as an adult he shows up at his sister's apartment, and he has some issues that he's really, really struggling with that seem a direct result of what happened in his past. So, and the sister has her own thing, and they have a relationship with their mother. First of all, it's a fantastic debut. It's right in the wheelhouse of the kind of stuff I like. It is a little rough, and but it really becomes an examination in terms of the sister of dealing with and handling with someone, a loved one, who is mentally ill. And so that's a lot of what this is about. But really good, really impressive debut, and I can't wait to see what Richard Mirabella comes up with next. If you've ever read any Dale Peck, it reminded me very much of something Dale Peck would have written. So there you go. Okay, for the thriller lovers out there, another thriller. Like I've had a whole day of thrillers. Okay, so You Know Her by Meagan Jennett. This was really, really fun. It was being pitched originally as Killing Eve meets My Sister, the Serial Killer, and that's pretty accurate. This is a kind of, it's about a woman serial killer who you meet from the very beginning. She's extremely charming. She works as a bartender, and she's just got to that place where she's so tired of men, making inappropriate comments, feeling like, the world is their oyster. They could treat women however they want, do whatever they want with no repercussions. So she literally takes it in her own hands and starts to kill them. So, coupled with that is a new female detective who's been brought onto the case as these men's bodies begin to pile up, who very slowly starts to not figure it out, but think, what's going on here? And the two women become friends. So there's kind of your Killing Eve similarity. But I will caution and say it is not a cat and mouse thriller. That is not what it is. That's not what happens. It definitely ratchets up the tension and things actually happen. It is not a neat and tidy ending either. So for people who want their mysteries and thrillers to be neatly tied up with a bow, you're not going to get this with this book. But personally, I don't need that all the time. I didn't feel it would have been consistent or honest with the tone of the book previous to have that. So it didn't bother me at all. And I really liked it. So there you go. All right. In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. I think I brought this up the other day. I loved this. I love this. I'm a big TJ Klune fan. This by far was my favorite of his books so far. His favorites of the, meaning this is the third. I haven't read his Extraordinaries. I think it's called The Extraordinaries. And I haven't read Wolf Song, but between House in the Cerulean Sea, Under the Whispering Door, and In the Lives of Puppets, this was my favorite. The reason is I felt like there was a growth and a maturity that happened with this book. You know, Cerulean Sea, which I love so much, feels a little like a wonderful young adult book to me that is a crossover, has so much crossover appeal. And Under the Whispering Door felt a little more mature, as it's the story that deals with death, where this, I really, I felt like we were moving into a new area with him, with, you know, things were kind of growing up more, if that makes sense. This involves the human race has been wiped out by robots. And I said in my review on Instagram, but it's not the Terminator, but the people who killed all the humans were like the Terminator. So it's kind of a reverse Pinocchio story, where this robot named Geo, who looks human, who is an inventor, is raising the one kind of human boy left in existence, whose name is Vic, who is now a teenager. Coupled with them is a nurse who was previously a health robot, a nurse who kind of has a sadistic streak, and her name is Nurse Ratchet, which is short for a longer name, but it's clearly a nod to Louise Fletcher in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, as well as a little cleaning robot named Rambo, who is very insecure and sweet and needy. The story really kind of takes off when the human Vic and the two other robots go searching out into the scrap pile and find this robot that's been kind of left and has kind of died out, who they bring back to life, who was, his name is Hap, but he previously was one of these robots that killed all the humans. So, bearing all that in mind, it kind of sets off a story where they set off. I don't want to give too much away, but there's an adventure that kind of takes place, and the robots have to head out to this kind of city of dreams, which is actually Las Vegas, which was Las Vegas. And it's kind of what happens. So it's a little Wizard of Oz, a little Pinocchio, but all kind of with a more of an adult lens. I said it could have very much be filtered through Guillermo del Toro or Tim Burton, because there's some scenes in it that are a little, I found, not disturbing, like, oh my God, I can't read anymore, but definitely creepy. But I loved it. And I love that TJ Klune very much writes about found family and writes about marginalized groups of people, especially focusing so much on LGBTQIA plus groups. And I so appreciate that, and writes them in such a positive and winning way. I think it's so important. So I, like, again, love this. If you want something that's just heartwarming and ultimately sweet, would highly recommend this. Yeah. Okay, for all of you who said, you got to read it, I read it and I loved it. Okay, The Appeal by Janice Hallett. I'm so glad I have her other two books, because I thought this was fantastic. I will say, because of the epistolary way that this book is written, all emails and letters, it took me about 60 pages before I was really keyed in, and I tabbed it. You'll notice I tabbed it in the beginning so I could keep, and clearly she did that for that particular reason, because she knew that everyone would have to go back to keep all the characters straight, because there are a lot of them. But this story of a murder that takes place around a small town theater company, I just thought was so clever. I love the way she put it together. I loved that we didn't know who died in the beginning, and it takes you 3/4 of the way of the book to figure out who it was. And I absolutely thought it was, first of all, going to be somebody else in the book. And I'm not going to give anything away and say it, but just the way the book was going, I was like, oh my God, please tell me it's this person. Because they're so annoying. And by just saying that, if you know who I'm talking about, I'm sure you know. But anyway, I laughed a lot. I thought it was so clever. So I can't wait to go into her next one, but would highly recommend if you want a smarter than average mystery that takes a different tack and tells the story in a completely different way. Do not read this if you're someone who needs to know who died in the first chapter and then spends the whole thing trying to figure it out. Or do not read this if you're looking for a book where someone's arbitrarily killing everybody and you don't know who the serial killer is, because that's not this either. This is like total, old, feels like an Agatha Christie-esque type book to me that's, smart and cleverly done, but can't speak highly enough about it. So thank you for those who encouraged me to pick it up this month. I'm really, really glad I did, but thank you. All right. The last two. The first is The People Who Report More Stress by Alejandro Varela. Alejandro Varela wrote The Town of Babylon, which I read earlier this year, which was about a man who goes back to his hometown to take care of his father, and while at the same time he goes to a high school reunion, and it brings up a lot of old shit for him. It was a lot about being an immigrant in this country, being queer in this country, kind of the white supremacy, the power structures that are put into place with that, trying to be an immigrant in this country and everything that means. So all of those themes kind of recur again in these series of stories. I have to say, he is such an interesting man. The way his mind works, I find him fascinating. And I find first of all, he's a beautiful writer. He's just fantastic. But for me, I really am responding to, it's weird to say I'm responding to his mind. I'm so responding to his mind. I find that the way that he works and his desire to kind of dismantle this power structure, the way he deals with being an outsider, the way he, both because of race, because of sexuality, all of these things that he talks about and talks about through these different characters, I find are the conversations that need to be happening with more people. I can't wait to see what he writes next, but would totally recommend this book. I just, both of his books. I think he's just great. Lastly, My Father's Brain, Life in the Shadow of Alzheimer's by Sandeep Jauhar. I had said before I wanted to read this book, and thank you to FSG for sending me this copy, because this is something that has affected my own family. I'm very conscious of it and straight up terrified of it. And this didn't diminish those fears, but this is his story about his father developing dementia. But it's also about kind of the history of the disease, its origins, what is kind of be done, while there's no cure for it at this time, what is continually being done. So it's that mix of, this story, which, not gonna lie, it's heartbreakingly sad, with this other side of it. So this is a book, I think, for people who, exactly like me, who are curious, who want to know more about the disease, who want to understand. And it's not going to give you a fundamental understanding of saying, like, this is exactly how it all works, although some of that is in there. I think that's more of the framework around the real story, which is, his father was this brilliant man, and kind of how the disease took away so much of what he had. So anyway, but I did not mean to to frankly end this on such a down note. Hey, look, octopus. But there you go. All right, so 10 books. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you plan to read any of these, if any of these sound interesting to you. I would love to know. Let me know what you read too. I would love to know that as well. I plan to come back in the next few days. Two things. One is I'm going to do a lot of the May releases that I'm excited about. I think there's like 10 things, all of which start coming out tomorrow. So be that as May, whatever. But there's a lot coming out. And then I will show you what I am thinking about trying to read for the rest of the month. So thanks again for stopping in. And if you like what you've seen today, like and subscribe. Have a great one, everybody, and I'll see you soon.